And we are back, folks, right here on hashtag AskGSM for November 14th, 2016. Happy Monday, guys. I'm Graham GSM Matthews on the Go Home Show for Survivor Series and TakeOver Toronto on Saturday and Sunday, respectively. It's going to be one hell of a weekend, or just even a week period. The next 7 days are stacked. I mean, today, obviously, we got the Go Home Show for Raw, for Survivor Series. Tonight, tomorrow, SmackDown 900 with The Undertaker and Edge coming back. If you watch Lucha Underground on Wednesday, we got Aztec Warfare 3, the almost always amazing annual occurrence. Can't wait for that on Wednesday. Thursday, I'll be at NXT Boston, my 4th NXT event overall, my 3rd of 2016. Friday, I'm heading home for Thanksgiving break. Back to good old CT. Saturday, TakeOver Toronto. And Sunday, Survivor Series. It does not get much better than this, guys. So I'm looking forward to the next week. But before all that, today, hashtag AskGSM, the final one before the stacked weekend coming up. As always, guys, if you want to send in a question, be sure to tweet me on the Twitter machine at WrestleRant with hashtag AskGSM. Find me on Facebook at facebook.com/Graham.GSM.Matthews. Give the pod channel a thumbs up and leave a question on the post I usually put up on Sunday nights or on the wall itself, or you can leave a question on this very video in the comment section down below. I'll be sure to answer it in next week's edition. So without further ado, we got 2 pages worth of questions, and even better, I don't have to go into work until a little later on today, until the afternoon, so I'm not cramming this in within 45 minutes per usual. My roommate left, later, a little bit later than I would have liked to had I woken up at the same time I usually do, so I would have had like 30, 40 minutes to film the show as always, but today I got a little bit more time because I don't have to go until the afternoon, which is great. I'll probably be missing Raw Live tonight, but that's fine. I'll watch it later. I can watch it on DVR and skip through all the commercials. There's, a Raw 3 hours live Monday nights can be draining sometimes, but that's another discussion for another day. So we kick off the questions first with Emmanuel A. from YouTube. I got WWE 2K17 recently and played a Royal Rumble match where Kane ended up winning. The reason I'm mentioning this is because he came in from number 17, your favorite number, and I know you've hosted a game where people pick a random number from 1 to 30, and the guy who enters from their selected number gets their entrant as their designated favorite wrestler of the year. Are you still doing that game? If so, how would you feel if Kane entered at 17 and proceeded to win the Rumble at San Antonio? Kane winning the Rumble in 2017 would just be so abysmally bad. I mean, I guess I could think of worse people to win it, like a Big Show or something, and Kane is going to go down as one of the all-time greats to have never won the Rumble, considering his, Rumble history, having been in, I think, almost every Rumble since he debuted, except for one, I think in 2012. That might have been the only Rumble he was not in. But anyway, he's been in so many Rumbles for so many years, and he's never won it. He had that amazing performance in 2001 where he had most eliminations in one match before Reigns broke that record in 2014. I think he has most eliminations overall. I think as of 2015 or 2016, I don't remember which, but I'm pretty sure he beat Shawn Michaels for most eliminations overall. But anyway, yeah, I do still do that game. You're absolutely right. Number 17 is my favorite number. I'm actually going to NXT Boston on the 17th on Saturday. You couldn't have timed that out, any better than it did. But anyway, yes, I'm still doing that game. It has been an annual occurrence since 2013. So this coming year, I think will be the 5th year. I'm pretty sure this January when we do the game again. I usually make the official announcement around Christmas time, early January, but bearing any changes, I'm pretty sure it will be, we'll be doing it again this year in January. So we did it in 2013, 2014, 15, 16. Yeah, 2017 will be the 5th annual year. And yes, I am still doing the game. As of 2016, you get a free WrestleRant t-shirt. And there's only 3 people who own a WrestleRant t-shirt because I don't sell them on Pro Wrestling Tees. I'm actually working on that right now. I'm in the midst of working on getting those t-shirts out on a popular platform, but I own a shirt. At Brandon_Dross owns a shirt. He was a friend of mine. He's been a friend of the show for like 5 years now, so he needed one for WrestleMania weekend. And at RJ_Marceau, the always illustrious RJ, got his shirt by winning the Rumble game back in January. So if you win the game, and it was funny because he won hashtag GSM Trivia 2 to pick his number, and the number he picked won the game. So it makes that game that much more important. If you win hashtag GSM Trivia, you could end up winning the Rumble. So the Rumble game itself, as RJ did. So anyway, to answer your question, yes, we are still doing the game. And to answer the second part of your question, if Kane won the Rumble at number 17, I just not a fan of that. And in 2017, from 17, I guess it'd be kind of cool for Kane anyway, because Kane, I've always liked Kane, never been like a top favorite of mine or anything, but him winning the Rumble 16 years after he should have, a little bit late, a little bit delayed, but I could think of worse people. But yes, bottom line, Kane should not win the Rumble. I wouldn't mind calling him my favorite for a year. I think this year I got, I got Braun Strowman this year. Braun Strowman actually has been doing a lot better, so that just doesn't really bother me. I was kind of mad about that at the beginning, but so far he really hasn't bothered me too much at all as my favorite wrestler. I completely forgot about that until now, until you mentioned it. At Blue Eye Disorder, my brother Jason, check out his awesome channel at Blue Eye Disorder for great videos all the time. Be sure to subscribe. His question was, after Asuka beats Mickie James, do you think Mickie will stay around? And who do you think she will put over before being brought to Raw or SmackDown? If she's being kept on NXT, which I don't think she is, I heard the original plan was for Trish. If she was in that Mickie James role, she would have been sticking around for a few dates. Now, when they say a few dates, they could be talking about TV tapings. They could be talking about live events, house shows. Like, what are we talking about here? Takeovers? I really don't think there's really no one else in developmental, other than maybe Ember Moon, that I really want to see Mickie James face. I think Asuka Mickie James is a big match. I'm very excited for it. But that's the biggest match they can do. And anything else I feel like would be a step down. So unless Mickie James worked her way back up to Asuka, which she's not doing, which I'm fine with the way they're doing it, then I would just bring her back to Raw and SmackDown. I mean, as of right now, it looks like it will be a one-off, but I think they'd be idiotic not to bring her to Raw or SmackDown to face off against girls like Bayley, Charlotte, Sasha, Becky Lynch, Nia Jax, maybe even, like the up-and-comers Alexa Bliss, I think would be really cool. Alexa and Mickie James, Natalya, a lot of cool women that I think they could do good matches. I know Natalya and Mickie had matches years ago, but this is all these years later. A lot of good women. Naomi. So yeah, I would love to see Mickie after NXT TakeOver Toronto, which she should not win. Like you said, you didn't say if Asuka beats Mickie. You said after Asuka beats Mickie James. There's no way that Mickie wins, and nor should she. Asuka must win. But I really do think that once she's done with NXT TakeOver Toronto, she should be brought up to Raw or SmackDown. Preferably SmackDown. I think Raw's women's division, they have the star power. They have enough star power. I think SmackDown could use it, even though their division is a bit better handled. I would bring her to SmackDown, have matches with Becky and Alexa and all those girls on the blue brand. His second question, is it just me, or does Liv Morgan seem like Carmella version 2? She really does. And Carmella isn't even really that good of a wrestler. So, I mean, Liv Morgan's not even as good as Carmella, which is saying something, but she's still in developmental for a reason. I don't know. I mean, Liv Morgan's cute. She's got the look going for her. But other than that, I mean, her in-ring ability isn't great. She really doesn't have much of a character. I think we've heard her speak maybe once or twice in NXT, and she's not even really that good of a talker. She's gotten her ass handed to her. She's gotten her ass handed to her on multiple occasions over the past couple of months at the hands of Billie Kay and Peyton Royce. So she's a loser. I don't hate Liv Morgan. I think she's all right, but the whole New Jersey gimmick is essentially a knockoff, whether it be intentionally or not, of Carmella, of Enzo Amore, whatever. So, I mean, I know that's just her. She's from New Jersey. That's who she is. But Carmella's the same way. We already kind of have that Brooklyn girl in Carmella. So, I don't know. I feel like they got to switch it up to kind of avoid doing a knockoff, a second coming of Carmella. You know, less than a year after Carmella was called up to the main roster. Just because she's gone doesn't mean you have to have another Carmella in developmental. The first KFC, also from YouTube. Does it feel weird after squashing local athletes that Braun Strowman is a part of a big match at Survivor Series? Not really. I mean, I was one of the few people, maybe not few. I'm not saying I was the only one to predict it, but I said weeks ago ahead of Survivor Series that Braun Strowman should be on Team Raw. And I know he's like my quote-unquote favorite wrestler of the year because of the Royal Rumble game. But even beyond that, I'm not really even the biggest Strowman fan. I've grown to like him through his time on Raw. I think they've really handled him well from the jobbers, from going to the jobbers to 1 to 2 to 3 jobbers at a time, to Sami Zayn for a little while, which they never had a match, which I hope they blow off at some point down the road. Or even if not, if Sami Zayn goes to SmackDown. But anyway, I just think that Braun Strowman, the way he's been booked, has been really good. The slow build, people are getting behind him as a monster heel. He's got the look. I think he's a lot better now on his own than he ever was with the Wyatt family, my personal opinion. But no, I mean, I really don't think it's all that weird at all. It's not like... I think it would have been a lot weirder if you had a guy like Cesaro or Sheamus, who are a bit higher up in the totem pole in WWE, but they've been doing nothing for months. You know what I mean? Like Baron Corbin is a lot like Braun Strowman. Before he got knocked off Team SmackDown, he's been winning a lot recently. He got put on Team SmackDown because he's been winning a lot. I know he's not been involved in any top-tier storylines like Braun Strowman, but both guys have been building momentum, so it makes sense for the winning guys to be put on a team that should hopefully win, from a storyline standpoint. And as soon as you sent in that question, the first thing that came to mind that you said after squashing local athletes, is it weird that he's involved in a big match at a pay-per-view? Look at Ryback. I mean, Braun Strowman isn't nearly as hot as Ryback was back in 2012, but for months, Ryback was really doing nothing. He was facing jobbers weekend, a lot longer than Braun Strowman was. For literally months, all we would ever see from Ryback was him squashing jobbers or local athletes for at least 6 months. And out of nowhere, he was put in the Hell in the Cell main event against CM Punk for the WWE Championship. After not having a match at the prior pay-per-view, the guy's at fucking Hell in the Cell main eventing for the WWE title. And people didn't really question that. I mean, maybe at first, but after seeing how over he was and how badly fans wanted to see him beat Punk for the belt, he didn't seem all that out of place at all. So I think Braun Strowman really isn't all that different. His next question, should the Cruiserweight division go to SmackDown? I think so. I mean, I was a big proponent of it at first, of going into Raw, like, oh, great, it could spice up to 3 hours, it could kill some time, but has it really made that big of a difference? Like, they have another match in the show. I was talking to RJ about this a couple days ago, but it's not going to really hurt Raw. I mean, Raw, let's think about this for a second. Is Raw really any better off than it was 2 months ago from before the Cruiserweight division debuted on the show? Not really. It's pretty much the same. They can find other ways to fill the 3 hours. They have a big enough roster where they could do it. There's people like Neville that aren't even making the fucking show every week because they're on Superstars and because they have so many people on that fucking show. And besides, I mean, they're filming the new WWE 205 live show, which I think debuts not next week, but I think the week after. I think the final Tuesday of the month, if I'm not mistaken. And they're going to be filming that after SmackDown Live. Now, it's pretty much like a 3-hour SmackDown, essentially, which I'm not a fan of. But if the Cruiserweights are going to be on, they're going to be, available on Tuesdays anyway to film the fucking show. Just have them be on SmackDown. It really makes no sense to do them both on SmackDown and Raw. I think it'd make a lot more sense to have the Cruiserweights on SmackDown, which was kind of it was a staple of SmackDown for many years, from 2002 to 2007. I mean, by the end, the Cruiserweight division meant pretty much nothing. But I think with the current crop of guys, and if they keep up the storylines or start to develop new storylines and don't get lost in the shuffle on Monday nights, but now on Tuesday nights, I think they can really help add to SmackDown. And SmackDown's great. SmackDown is always entertaining. So imagine how better it would be if you had the guys on the Blue brand, with real storylines and the guys that don't make SmackDown, because it is only a 2-hour show, unlike Raw. You could just put them on the WWE 205 live show. They have more than enough guys to fill up those 2 hours / 1 hour afterwards. So I think it just makes the most sense. Kalisto should be on the Raw in the Cruiserweight division anyway. So if he loses, what does he fucking do? I love Kalisto. I like that he was on SmackDown, but that was before they announced the Cruiserweight division was coming back. And it made no sense to put him on a separate show. So, I really do hope the division goes to SmackDown. I think it just makes the most sense in every aspect of it. Captain Sunshine, also from YouTube. That Fatal 5-Way on Raw was fun, albeit of a glorified house show main event. In a way, it's like an appetizer for the Survivor Series elimination matches. I'm sure those will be enjoyable, but I don't get the feeling they're as high stakes as WWE wants to think. Brock Lesnar Goldberg 2 should close Survivor Series, not that I'm totally on the hype train for that either, but out of everything on the card, Lesnar Goldberg genuinely has the highest stakes. Agree or disagree? I absolutely agree. I am looking forward to Lesnar Goldberg more than anything else on the show. I mean, a couple of people, Brad Bradar said later on, he said, I'm absolutely hyped for Survivor Series, and I am too. I'm really looking forward to the Raw and SmackDown matches. I think all 3 matches have potential. I think a lot. I mean, the build has been kind of shaky. Raw and SmackDown last week were not really that good. SmackDown was a bit better than Raw, but not by much. Just putting these guys in matches against each other because they can't really do the cross-brand thing, and maybe we see that tonight. I don't know. But, I just think the build for all 3 bouts has been kind of weird. But overall, I think out of every match on that show, I'm really looking forward to most storyline-wise. I think Ziggler-Zayn could kill it. I think they could have the match of the night. But Lesnar-Goldberg, I'm not excited for it as a wrestling match, but just the idea of it, Goldberg coming back for one match, Brock Lesnar being Brock fucking Lesnar. The video packages they did last week were amazing. I thought those were phenomenal. So And it really is high stakes. I mean, they really sent that message. They really hit that home. They really hit the hammer on that right on the head when they said that in the video packages last week. When Goldberg said he was coming back for one match and he doesn't want to fail for his kid, he was going to be watching him wrestle for the first time. And Brock Lesnar doesn't want to lose again to Goldberg, having been the only person to lose to Goldberg. And Goldberg is the only guy to beat Brock Lesnar, and Brock Lesnar has not gotten his win over him again. He's the only guy that Brock Lesnar has lost to that he never beat one-on-one. So I think it'd be great if they avenge that loss and the whole story is there. And again, from an in-ring standpoint, I don't think it's going to be a spectacle. It could be, who knows? I mean, you never really know. I mean, the guy's almost 50, Goldberg, and Brock Lesnar's in-ring style's kind of been toned down a bit for the suplexes and shit like that. But, yeah, I think Lesnar-Goldberg definitely has the highest stakes. I think for Raw and SmackDown, I think someone said last week there were rumors of the winning teams getting a draft pick. I'm not really a huge fan of that, but at least it would make the matches more meaningful. Like with bragging rights even. Like the winning team between Raw and SmackDown got a fucking trophy. How much that meant, I don't know. But they got something. You know, they got just that, bragging rights. For this, what do they really get? I mean, for like Kalisto, Brian Kendrick, they have, the Cruiserweight division at stake. And if Kalisto wins, the division goes to SmackDown. For the IC title match, the title could go to Raw if Sami Zayn wins. So those matches have high stakes. But the 3 elimination matches really don't. I think it'd be cool if they did something a lot like the old SmackDown vs. Raw 07 game, which I know you guys know that I'm a huge fucking fan of, from General Manager mode. At WrestleMania every year, they would have 3 Raw and SmackDown matches. You would have 1 Raw, 1 SmackDown, a guy against each other on each show, on the show facing off, and whoever won the majority of the brand split, or the Raw versus SmackDown matches, of those 3 matches, would get a draft pick. I think you either got a draft pick or you got to save one of your people on your roster for being drafted. They were exempt from the draft. It was either that, I forgot what you win when you win the GM of the Year award. It was one of the two. But it made those matches meaningful, even for a game. I feel like that they can kind of copy that in real life for this show. Maybe not 3 draft picks, but maybe 1 trade pick or something like that. They got to have some high stakes, and maybe they will. They're having Daniel Bryan and Shane on Raw tonight. I heard somewhere that they're doing it after Raw and not on Raw itself. Like, we need more fucking television beyond Raw, but that's their prerogative, whatever. So I guess we'll see where they're going with it, but I definitely do agree Lesnar-Goldberg has the highest stakes, absolutely, of anything on that show, which is why I'm looking the most forward to that match over anything else. Mitch G. Favorite Motor City Machine Guns match? It's really hard to say because I love the series of matches they had, and I feel like they really are underrated. I feel like they do not get talked about enough by wrestling fans. The series of matches they had back in 2010 with beer money over the TNA World Tag Team titles were revolutionary, in my opinion, for tag team wrestling, specifically for TNA. TNA's tag team division for a long time was a lot better than WWE's, and then it really fell off a cliff in like 2011, 2012, 2013. When they put the belts on the Bromance and all these other shit-ass teams. Like, I don't fucking care about these guys. It was awful. But yeah, so I think those series of matches they had back in 2010 with Beer Money, I think the last one might have been Full Metal Mayhem. They had a couple Full Metal Mayhem matches, I think, with the Young Bucks back in TNA, with Generation Me, as they were called at the time. I think including one at Bound for Glory, which was also really, really good. Or maybe it was the show after that. I don't really remember, but they had a lot of good matches that year. The Motor City Machine Guns, in my opinion, were the tag team of 2010 by far between WWE and TNA. I'm not speaking for Ring of Honor or Japan or the Indies or whatever, but Motor City Machine Guns that year had a great series of matches with Beer Money that I fucking loved. That said, you said favorite Beer Money match, or rather favorite Motor City Machine Guns match, and I think I'd be hard-pressed, as much as I love those Beer Money matches, I'd be hard-pressed to go with anything but Ladder War 6, which I was in attendance for. I probably would have loved it anyway, but the fact that I was there for it in Lowell at All-Star Extravaganza 9, or 8, I think it was 8, back in September 30th, only a month and a half ago. That main event was insane. One of the greatest matches I've absolutely ever seen live. That match was just incredible, and I watched it back that weekend from what it looked like on TV, and it was wonderful. That whole match was just incredible. Excuse me, I'm losing my voice today for some reason. But yeah, I thought that match was just wonderful. So I got to go Ladder War 6 between them, the Young Bucks, and who was the third team? The Addiction, Christopher Daniels and Frankie Kazarian. His second question, What was the biggest disappointment as far as a tournament in wrestling in your opinion? Oh man, I don't. That's a good question. I thought for whatever reason, when I first wrote down your question last night, I thought it said tournament final. You just said tournament. So I wrote down Reigns and Ambrose because I thought the tournament last year to crown a new WWE World Heavyweight Champion was good for the most part. And Reigns and Ambrose was a logical match to do in the finals, but the match was not good. It was like 9 minutes long. It was really disappointing that Reigns won so decisively as he did, to win the belt. No turn, no swerves, no nothing. Sheamus cashing in afterwards. That pay-per-view sucked. But, the tournament wasn't bad. The tournament really was not that bad. So I can't think of any tournaments in recent years that were terrible. And even if there were some, I just can't think of any. I will say the 2015 King of the Ring tournament was abysmal. Like, they had Stardust in there. They had R-Truth. Like, are you kidding me? And R-Truth ended up getting to the semifinals. It's like, are you fucking kidding me? No one cared about these guys. No one cared about him. Barrett won, which I thought was cool, but they ended up doing nothing with the guy. They gave him a fucking plunger as his scepter. It was bad. So I probably would have to go with the 2015 King of the Ring in recent years anyway. That was a huge disappointment. I was so excited they were bringing back King of the Ring, and then they rushed it in a matter of 2 days. Barrett winning was the right guy to win, but they did nothing with him. So in retrospect, it was a complete waste of time. And they haven't brought it back since, unsurprisingly enough. Next question of his, which did you enjoy more, between the NXT Championship 4-Way from 2014 or the NXT Women's Championship 4-Way from 2015, I think he meant? Great question. I enjoyed both bouts a lot. The 2014 NXT title one, the one that you're referring to, is from the Fatal 4-Way TakeOver, the third live special they ever did between Neville, Sami Zayn, Tyson Kidd, and Tyler Breeze, which was amazing. And in my opinion, one of the most underrated matches in NXT history. And then the 2015 with the women was the 4 Horsewomen, Bayley, Becky Lynch, Sasha Banks, and Charlotte. I rewatched that a couple months ago on the NXT DVD that I own, and it's a great, great match. It's really hard to say, but I'm going to have to go with the former. I'd have to buy the first one and sell the second one. I think I really enjoyed the first one more with the men. That match was really, really good. And again, in my opinion, one of the most underrated matches in NXT history just because of everyone that was involved. And the finish was phenomenal. Sami Zayn with a super kick, or getting a super kick right from Neville. What are you doing? Because after he hit the haluva kick, I think on Tyson Kidd, or I think it might have been Tyler Breeze. I don't remember. He hit the haluva kick on somebody in the corner. 1, 2. And Neville pulls him out the last possible second. And Sami Zayn said, I thought we were friends. None of you are supposed to be my friend, like a la Batista. But he's like, what are you doing, man? Boom. Sweet chin music, or a super kick rather, not Shawn Michaels, but super kick from Neville. Beautifully executed too. Could not have been better executed. Perfectly executed. Right to the jaw of Sami Zayn. He's out. Red arrow to follow it up from Neville to score the victory and retain his title. Just a beautiful finish to a phenomenal match. I got to go with that one. And although the women's match is also really, really good. Next question of his, or those were his 3 questions. The next questions come from at Frankishare15. Least favorite NXT TakeOver opening match. So I had to go back and look this up to see what the opening matches were. I think we've had 11 specials, 11 or 12 specials. I think 12. And of all of them, this one by far, I didn't even remember this happened, to be honest with you. Before I looked it up, I completely forgot this match even happened. From NXT TakeOver, the first TakeOver, but the second special from May 2014, Adam Rose versus Camacho. I remember the feud. It lasted not a long time at all, but Camacho sucked. They canned him like a month later after this match. Not even, like a couple weeks later, he was gone from the company. The guy was not good. He went to TNA for a cup of coffee and then disappeared right afterwards. But I didn't even remember that match happened until I looked it up. But every other opening match has been really, really good. We've had a strong streak of opening matches at TakeOver. Zayn and Cesaro from NXT Arrival. Tyler Breeze and Jushin Thunder Liger from Brooklyn 1. From Brooklyn this year, we had No Way Jose and Austin Aries, a match that really exceeded expectations for a lot of people. We've had The Revival versus, I think, Finn Balor and Samoa Joe at Respect. We've had a lot of awesome matches in those opening slots at TakeOver. Even, Andrade Cien Almas versus Ty Dillinger. We've had American Alpha versus Revival from Dallas TakeOver earlier this year. So a lot of great ones. But I'd have to go as the least favorite, easily Adam Rose and Camacho. I loved Adam Rose at the time, but that match really served no purpose whatsoever. And Adam Rose was already in the main roster, so it was really a waste. Are you looking forward to Elias Sampson's return Are you looking forward to Elias Sampson returning next week? Not really, no. I mean, I could not care less for Elias Sampson. I'm happy the guy's back. He's been gone for like 5 months or something like that. I remember when he got hurt, like in late May, early June. I think in late May. And they said he broke his ankle or something. He had an ankle injury, twisted it or something like that. And I thought he'd be out for a couple weeks. The guy was out for 5 months. So it must have been a lot more serious than people anticipated. But it's not like people, I think someone asked me here on the show a couple weeks ago, whatever the hell happened to Elias Sampson? I said, I have no idea. I have not heard an update on him in months, absolutely. And then literally that same day, either that day or the next day, it was revealed like on SmackDown. It was the Tuesday before SmackDown, or the day of SmackDown, I remember, because I read it right before I watched SmackDown. Elias Sampson returning to NXT this Thursday at the tapings or whatever. I'm like, oh, of course they would come out with that right after I said I have no idea what happened to him on hashtag on Monday. So, I could not care less about Elias Sampson. I mean, hey, more bodies in the roster, that's awesome, but Elias Sampson, unless he switches up the gimmick upon his return, I don't think anyone's going to care. Chris M. from Facebook, do you think The Undertaker versus Triple H at WrestleMania 28 is one of the best matches ever? A great match? Yes. I thoroughly enjoyed that match. Probably not number one, maybe? No, I don't think it's number one. No, definitely not number one. Not number one. In terms of favorite Undertaker matches at WrestleMania, I think Shawn Michaels obviously takes the cake with that one, 25 or 26. But the WrestleMania 28 match was really, really good. Best matches ever? Definitely not. Especially if you ask Bret Hart, who would rate it a 4 out of 10. That's an inside joke for people who get it. But anyway, I enjoyed the match. Best match ever? Definitely not. It had a lot of great storytelling, but it was not an amazing match to the point where it might be remembered as one of the greatest of all time. A really, really good match for what it was, but not just beyond absolutely amazing, a lot like, Taker and Michaels was a few years earlier. Andre G., also from Facebook, do you think WWE has wasted Apollo Crews so far in the main roster? They have. I mean, I was holding out hope. I'm like, I'm going to give him more time, see what they do with him. He was undefeated for a little while, lost his first match to Chris Jericho back in May. I'm like, okay, that was a bit random. Had the mini feud with Sheamus, who he beat at Money in the Bank, and they did nothing with him after that. He got moved to SmackDown, which I thought was the best thing for him, albeit in the fucking supplemental draft. He was one of the final draft picks, which was so stupid. He got picked after the Shining Stars, after Golden Truth. I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? But anyway, he's got a lot of raw potential, a lot of talent, a lot of skill, but he's been doing nothing. I couldn't even tell you the last time he won a match on SmackDown. He's lost to Baron Corbin. He lost to The Miz. He lost to fucking Kurt Hawkins on Tuesday. It's like, are you serious? Really? I like Kurt Hawkins, but really? It's like people aren't, quote The Miz, really? I mean, people aren't going to look at Kurt Hawkins as a threat now that he's beaten Apollo Crews, who also has not won a match in months on SmackDown. So, yes, they have absolutely wasted him. I'm not saying he's damaged goods. They can't, repair him. It's only been a couple months he's been in the main roster, like 5 or 6 months at this point. But it really has been disappointing how they've utilized him so far in WWE on the main roster. He got called up too quickly, I think, is really the answer to your question. He should not have been called up when he was. I think that if they waited a couple more months, if they didn't call him up the day after WrestleMania, because by that point he was still doing nothing in NXT for a lot of them for many months. So I think that they should have had him win the championship first before coming to the main roster. At the Average Grunt, what do you think about the IC and CW, the Cruiserweight titles, switching brands? Do you think it could be beneficial for both shows? You don't really need to have them switch shows, though. I don't want the IC and US titles both on Raw. You don't need that. You don't need 2 mid-card titles in one show. The Cruiserweight division is supplemental for Raw for that third hour. And they can bring it to SmackDown. You don't need an equivalent to the Cruiserweight Championship. You don't need a hardcore title to counteract the Cruiserweight Championship. You don't need a 24/7 title or a European Championship. It would be not that bad, but those titles never served really all that much of a purpose to begin with. The 24/7 role for the hardcore title was cool for a time, but it would never work in today's age where the creative team is really not all that creative. One of the best parts about that division was the fact that they got creative with the 24/7 rule. It was a lot of fun, and they would never really do something like that today because they would never be that creative to do matches in ball pits and in airports and shit like that. I can never see them doing shit like that today. They're just not that creative, more often than not anyway. So just bring the Cruiserweight title to SmackDown. Keep the IC title on SmackDown too. You don't need 2 mid-card titles on the same show. If Sami Zayn wins the SmackDown IC title, he'll either be drafted to SmackDown, moved to SmackDown. They're not going to keep the IC title belt on Raw. So I would keep the IC title on SmackDown regardless of whether Sami wins it or not. And then move Sami with the belt but also move the Cruiserweight division to SmackDown because I think, as I said earlier, it would just be a lot more beneficial to those guys on the show and in the division. His second question, imagine a Survivor Series match that if you lose, you die. Which 5 WWE superstars would you trust with your life? Note, they all still act like they're characters. So if you pick a cowardly heel, there's a chance they will walk out on you. Man, we're getting dark in here. If I lose, I die. It's literally the Survivor Series. I mean, I feel like we talked about earlier when Captain Sunshine said those matches really don't have all those high stakes and the elimination matches. Imagine that, like whoever is like the last remaining person for their team, whatever team loses, they get killed. Could you imagine that? I could see them doing shit like that in Lucha Underground where people die all the time in storyline. Never in WWE, obviously, but I feel like if you want to boost subscription numbers and boost pay-per-view buys and shit like that, put people's lives on the line in these matches at a literal Survivor Series pay-per-view, the name suggests just that, a Survivor Series, I think you would garner a lot more interest in these shows than you have right now, in my personal opinion. But anyway, I don't know if you're talking about all time or the current roster. I'm going to think, I thought you said the current roster. That's what I thought you meant. So I went with Cena, Undertaker, Rollins, Reigns, and Ambrose. I went with the top 5 baby faces, or top 4 baby faces, and then Taker. Just because Taker's fucking Undertaker, and you know he's not going to do the job. Same thing with John Cena on a Survivor Series pay-per-view anyway. Same thing with Roman Reigns. So if you have 3 people who rarely do the job on one team, what are the chances that they're going to lose? In addition to the fact they're also really, really good. And you also put the Shield on one team. They're going to have that cohesiveness. They're all baby faces right now for the most part, I think. Anyway. So they will have that cohesiveness, and the Shield ruled Survivor Series back in 2013, I think it was. So I'm totally fine with them. Those 5 guys representing me and putting my life on the line and hopefully winning. So if you're talking current roster members, again, 5 people I would put on my Survivor Series team to protect my life would be John Cena, The Undertaker, Roman Reigns, Seth Rollins, and Dean Ambrose. No heels, like you said, because they would walk out on me, and all those guys are baby faces. So that would be my team to represent me at Survivor Series if my life was on the line. At Sean Markistic from Twitter as well. As of right now, what are 3 possible matches that you could see happening at WrestleMania 33? Rollins and Triple H, obviously. John Cena and The Undertaker. And Big Show and Shaq. I think it's pretty much all but confirmed at this point by WWE. But those are 3 matches I could totally see happening. Rollins and H, which they've been building for months, years even, but started back in August. Taker and Cena, which should happen. Unless Cena goes for the belt, but I could see that happening, but I think Cena and Taker just makes the most sense. And then Big Show and Shaq, also, which has pretty much been confirmed, and they're probably going to do it, as they should. Just get it over with. Big Show's final match. I'd be totally fine with that. His second question, do you think that the face-off between Brock Lesnar and Goldberg will end in a pull-apart brawl? There's a good chance it will. And if it's half as good as the one between Taker and Lesnar from last summer, then we're in for a treat tonight on Raw. For some reason, I feel like, and I know Randy brought this up a couple weeks ago when we were talking, I feel like on the go-home show tonight we'll have some big pull-apart brawl between Raw and SmackDown, the 2 teams for Sunday, and not Lesnar and Goldberg. I mean, I guess we'll see. But I think there is a good chance we could see a big-ass brawl between Lesnar and Goldberg tonight on Raw, which would be really, really good. So again, like I said, if it's half as good as the one between Taker and Lesnar from last summer, which was one of, if not the best brawl I've ever seen in WWE in the time that I've been a fan for almost a decade at this point, then this one between Lesnar and Goldberg should also be really, really good. Because it's playing to their strengths, too. It plays to their strengths in that they're both brawlers anyway. So I think it could be a lot of fun if they do that tonight on Raw. And if they don't, no worries. Just save their physical contact for Survivor Series. So either way, it's a win-win. At Swagzio, is it annoying how WWE keeps referring to SmackDown as SmackDown Live? A little bit. Kind of. Just the thing with that is that, I don't know. Just the fact that they're calling it SmackDown Live doesn't surprise me because it is live now. It's the name of the show. So the fact they call it SmackDown Live doesn't really bother me because it is the name of the show. So it's like, why would you call it something that it wasn't? You know what I mean? But, yeah, so that doesn't really bother me. I would rather have them just call it SmackDown, but SmackDown Live isn't really all that annoying in my opinion. His second question, was it a mistake for Sanity to lose their first match clean so early in their run? Not really. I mean, I would have rather kept... I mean, it's only 2 members of Sanity, though. I mean, Eric Young disregarding the match against Samoa Joe from many months ago, that was before he came into Sanity, though, with Sanity. He has also not been in the ring yet, so they're still technically undefeated. They already had the girl lose. I forgot what her name was, but she lost on NXT a few weeks ago after a referee reverse decision, which was interesting. But, yeah, so I don't think it was really that big of a deal. I know people were saying, I'd rather see Sanity and Authors of Pain. Not really. That match would not be good. With their given styles, Authors of Pain need to be carried to a good match. We saw that with No Way Jose and Rich Swann. We saw that with DIY last week. They had a really good match in NXT. I feel like TM61 are great athletes, so I was completely fine with them winning and going into the finals. Authors of Pain and TM61 have history anyway. The match is going to be 10 times better with TM61 in there as opposed to Sanity. And then you have a babyface team, a heel team as opposed to 2 heel teams. I feel like it was just for the better. And then Sanity was protected anyway because TM61, it was a fluke win. They were hurt. So they can continue the feud beyond TakeOver if they want. So, no, I feel like it worked out for the best, in my opinion. At John Wealth 23, best and worst match you have ever seen live. Worst match, it's hard to say. I've gone to a lot of shows, a lot of wrestling shows, definitely over 3 dozen in the past 7-8 years. So it's really hard to say what the worst match I've ever seen was. Ziggler and Rusev, I think it wasn't terrible, but from SummerSlam 2015, nobody cared. Nobody cared about that shit. So that might be up there, but it's really hard to pinpoint one terrible match I've seen live. I've seen so many. There really wasn't one match that comes to mind, and I tried to erase it from my mind. There's not one match that comes to mind that's like, oh my God, that was so bad when I saw it live. Best match is a lot harder. Like I said, Ladder War 6 from this year was just incredible. That's definitely leading the list, or near the top of the list. You have Styles and Cena also from this year, which I saw in attendance, live in attendance. At SummerSlam, one of my favorite matches of all time, let alone I've seen in person. That match was just phenomenal, pun intended. And then obviously, I think I'm still debating between Styles and Cena and in this match, but I think this match has to be the best match I've ever seen live. Bayley and Banks from TakeOver Brooklyn. Just the emotion, the build, the drama, the in-ring action, the fallout, the celebration of the championship victory for Bayley. Everything about it was perfection. Absolute perfection. So I got to go with that match as my favorite match. Not my favorite, but the best match I've ever seen live. Is James Ellsworth overexposed? Yes, he is. I like James Ellsworth, but I think the thing with James Ellsworth is the fact that he's just on the TV way too much. He's always on the fucking show. He's in like 5 segments on one show. It's just really ridiculous how often he's on the show. They really need to change that shit because the more he's on the show, the older he gets. And I'm not talking about age. I'm talking about the more overexposed he gets, the more tiresome he grows. So yes, he is overexposed. If they're trying to turn him heel at like TLC or something by turning on Dean Ambrose, I could see why they're doing it. But if not, they're really ruining any momentum this guy had by putting him on the show week after week after week. Just have Baron Corbin like kill the guy or something. He shows back up in the Rumble. I'd be fine with that and people would pop. But if he's on the TV every single fucking week for the next month and a half, then people are going to get sick of him very quickly and want to see him tossed from the Rumble very, very quickly. His next question, is it weird when Blake and Murphy lost the NXT Tag Team Championships that they were not brought up to the main roster? Not really, because Blake and Murphy are really not that good. They're good wrestlers, but I've always said they come off like Cause. The creator wrestlers from the WWE video games, they're so fucking generic. I like Murphy a lot more than I do Blake, but they were just never the most exciting tag team. I cannot believe for the life of me they held those belts for like 7 months. And they dropped them to the Vaudevillains of all people. Not like Enzo Amore and Big Cass or anyone, but fucking Vaudevillains. But they held those belts for 7 months. And you could see why people cheered the Vaudevillains because no one cared about Blake and Murphy. The only reason why anyone ever cared about those guys was because of Alexa Bliss. And since they split up and Alexa's on the main roster and killing it right now, no one could give a shit about either one of these guys. So it was not surprising, like, oh, I think every team that has held the tag team titles has been called up. I mean, with the exception of a few of the earlier teams like Neville and Oliver Gray, who got cut, or Corey Graves, who technically did get called up years later as an announcer. Neville has gotten called up. The Wyatt family got called up months later after they held the tag team titles in 2013. Not Graves and Neville as a team. They split up right afterwards. The Ascension, yes. Lucha Dragons, yes. Blake and Murphy, no. Like the Vaudevillains, yes. Not right afterwards, but many months later they did get called up. Not like it made a difference anyway. No one cares about them. The Revival, not yet, because they still are tag team champions. They won them, lost them, then won them back. They might be champions. They might be dropping the belts as soon as Saturday. We'll see. But not yet the Revival. And then American Alpha, who also got called up a couple months after dropping the tag team title. So it's not really all that surprising that Blake and Murphy did not get called up, because I think, not that NXT needs them more, it's just that there's no real desire to see them on either Raw or SmackDown. They're just not exciting at all. At Scarlet One from Twitter as well. I know you don't like to talk about politics, but how do you feel about Harambe and his 15,000 votes in this election? Oh, man. Like you said, I don't like to talk about politics. I'm not a huge political guy. I was following the polls last Tuesday. I stayed up, I think, up until maybe 1. And then it got to be way too late, and I just went to bed. By that point, I knew Trump was winning, so I didn't even bother staying up, and I just saw the news the next day. But I did see that on Tuesday night, that Harambe. I saw at the time the report that he got 11,000 votes, but maybe they ended up totaling overall like to 15,000, so maybe that's where that number is coming from. I've heard 15, I've heard 11, but it's still a lot of votes. 11, 15,000. Doesn't matter. It's still a lot of votes. I laughed, and then I almost cried because it's so sad that people would waste a vote on a dead gorilla. I know it's a funny meme. I get that. My roommate is as big of a meme guy as anyone. He thought it was funny. I laughed, but it's also sad. It's like I saw this perfect picture, and someone else, I think it was at We Gaza, and I forgot what the number at the end of his Twitter handle is. My apologies, at We Gaza, but he sent me a picture, which I also saw earlier on in the day. It said, "How could our country come to two of the worst candidates in recent memory?" Which was like in quotation marks. Says the country that voted in a dead gorilla for president. I'm like, that's so true. Or that's on their 6-month mourning of a dead gorilla. And that was before this came out that Harambe got 15,000 votes in the election. So I'm not going to talk about whether Trump winning was good or bad, whether I'm Democratic or I'm a Democratic or a Republican or whatever. I don't really, like I said, I'm not a huge political guy anyway, but just in terms of that question with Harambe and the fact that he got 15,000 votes, it's like, oh my God. Like, then again, as sad as that is, I expect absolutely nothing less from this country. Expect nothing less from America. So, proud to be an American? Yes, but sometimes probably not. That was just embarrassing. Next question of theirs, is the Brian Kendrick looking weaker than necessary? He's gotten pinned by Rich Swann twice, and then Noam Dar hit him on Raw. Speaking of which, why didn't Noam Dar just win the tag team match at Scotland? He was the only one over there to begin with. The whole booking of the match, the division, is just, it's getting weirder and weirder by the week. It's like, why would, in storyline, my buddy Tom, who I do Wrestle Rant Radio with every week on Fridays, cheap plug, he mentioned to me after that happened, like a week ago when I saw him last Tuesday or Wednesday or whatever it was. He's like, in storyline, and I could not agree more with this statement. In storyline, why the hell would Brian Kendrick agree to team up with Noam Dar? Or even vice versa. You got a heel and an obvious babyface. Why does that even make sense? I know he turned on him afterwards. It was just so silly. And then it's like, okay, Rich Swann beat the champ twice, but you get Kalisto getting a title shot at the pay-per-view and not Rich Swann. So, what was the point of him beating the champ twice? I like Rich Swann a lot, but it's just, again, the booking of this division just makes no sense to me right now. But that was just really, really stupid. But yeah, Noam Dar was he was super over. I don't know why he teamed with Kendrick only to lose. He turned on him afterwards, which I guess made up for it in a way. It was just really, really silly. But I think it was a cool debut, though, for him to come out, which I did not know. I did not look at the match listing for Raw before it aired, because I know it was taped earlier on in the day in Glasgow. It was a really, really cool debut for Noam Dar. I did not think they would hold out. I was wondering why they didn't debut him sooner. There were reports of him debuting months ago, or at least like a month or two ago at the very earliest. And he never debuted, but they held out until that Raw in Glasgow, and it worked out perfectly. Even though he lost, but he did turn on Kendrick afterwards, and the whole thing is just weird. But it was a cool debut, though. At Brad Bradar, we'll finish off here with a couple more questions from Brad and at Mr. Singleton16. So first, Brad's questions. If the Revival were to move up to the main roster after their match at TakeOver, which brand should they go to? I think SmackDown has a lot of heel tag teams as it is. They have the Vaudevillains. They have Breezango, Ascension, Spirit Squad, and the Usos. That's 5 teams right there. That's 5 heel tag teams. And they have a lot of tag teams. Raw needs more tag teams than SmackDown, so I'm tempted to say Raw. But then if I say Raw, I feel like they'll get lost. Like, I'm so biased because I bleed blue. I'm a Team SmackDown guy for life. I said that to you guys months ago on the Random Video Blog. I'm a Team SmackDown guy through and through. And I told you in the end it would be the better brand. And who was right? Me. I know a lot of you guys said the same thing, but people were saying, oh, why are you Team SmackDown? Their roster is smaller. It's not as strong. The show is not going to be good. And 2 months later, people are praising it as the greatest thing ever, which it is. But people should have realized from the get-go, it's a marathon, not a sprint for SmackDown. And that could not have been more accurate for the Blue brand. But anyway, going back to your question, what brand should they go to? I want to say SmackDown because I feel like they will get a better shot on SmackDown, but Raw needs more tag teams. I'm going to go with Raw. And I don't really care too much about Cesaro and Sheamus as a tag team. I mean, if they win the belts from New Day, cool at Roadblock, but I think it'd be even cooler if the Revival got called up and they were the team to beat the New Day for the tag team titles on Raw. That would be awesome. And they're a heel tag team anyway, so it makes sense, you know? I don't think they will get called up after TakeOver, even if they drop the belts, which I don't think they are. I've got Revival going over. But even if they did drop the belts on Saturday, they wouldn't get called up ASAP. They always do the rematch. Look at Samoa Joe. Look at Bayley. Look at all these other guys. American Alpha. They always get their tag team title, women's title, NXT title rematch before they get called up. Kevin Owens, same thing. So I don't see them getting called up even if they drop the belts on Saturday. I do not see them getting called up like on Monday, if that makes sense. They'll get a rematch on NXT or something. But again, I don't see Revival losing. So it might be a while before we see Revival on Raw or SmackDown, but if I had to choose a brand right now, as much as I want to say SmackDown, it's going to have to be Raw. They're so drained of tag teams, they have to put the shining stars on Team Raw. Whatever. His next question, do you think Jason Jordan is going to have a breakout performance at Survivor Series, much like Roman Reigns 3 years ago? I think he's talking about like a future year. I mean, maybe. I think it's no coincidence that, I was going to say debut at Survivor Series. Oh, fuck, man. God damn it. I'm thinking he's still in NXT. I thought you were talking about a future year. Damn it. I'm thinking, I thought you were talking about like on his own when he gets called up, but he already is in the main roster. I'm a couple months late. I'm sorry. But, he could. I think it'd be cool if American Alpha really shined in that match. I don't think they will. I think they will get their signature spots in, but when you have so many people in one match, there's going to be 20 people in that tag team match. And I really hope they play by the rules they did back in 87 or 88, whenever they did the match, when they did the same thing of 5 teams on each team, 5 teams to a team. And then when one member of each team was eliminated, the whole team was gone. And that match was actually really, really good. And you got a lot of talent in this one match on Sunday. So I'm hoping it's good. It's as good as the one from 20, 30 years ago. But yeah, I think American Alpha, if they're given a run, if they're given some time in the ring, then yeah, I think they could have a really, really good performance. I think there's a lot better chance they're going to try to spread it out and make sure everyone gets their time in. But if they're eliminated quickly, I'll be pissed. But hopefully they are. If not the remaining team, then one of the final few teams before getting cut. I still think SmackDown should win that match, but that's just me. Next question. Both shows are looking fantastic in my opinion. Which show are you looking forward to more? TakeOver Toronto or Survivor Series? TakeOver Toronto by far. I'm looking forward to Survivor Series too. I definitely agree Survivor Series is looking fantastic with the 3 Raw and SmackDown matches, or technically 5, but the Raw and SmackDown tag team matches. You got Kendrick and Kalisto, which could be also really, really good with high stakes. You got Ziggler and Zayn, which could bring the house down. And then Lesnar and Goldberg. Goldberg's first match in 12 years. Or 12 years? Yeah, 12 years. 12 and a half years. Almost a dozen years. So it's going to be a big show. I'm looking forward to that, but I got to go TakeOver Toronto. It's a stacked card. It always is. We've never had a bad TakeOver. We've had fucking 12 TakeOvers, and not a bad one yet. Really. So I think the show's going to be great. You got Mickey and Asuka for the women's title, a dream match. You got Joe and Shinsuke again for the NXT title, which was a really, really good match in Brooklyn when I was there. So the rematch should also be just as good, if not better. You got Revival versus DIY for the tag titles in a 2 out of 3 falls match, which they've done before, but never at a TakeOver, I don't think. So that match should be amazing. That should be a really, really good match. Their match in Brooklyn was just phenomenal. So that match in Toronto should be really, really good. You also have Authors of Pain versus Team 6-1 in the finals of the Dusty Rhodes Tag Team Classic, which should also be killer. And then finally, Bobby Roode and Ty Dillinger, 2 Canadian hometown guys from Toronto, I think, or right outside Toronto. So that match for the entrances alone should be epic. So I got to go TakeOver Toronto, but Survivor Series is not far behind on the hype train for me. I'm absolutely amped for both shows this weekend. And his final question, what matches are the hardest and easiest to predict at TakeOver and Survivor Series? Easiest, I would say I put Ziggler-Zayn down for a Survivor Series. I would say the easiest predict is Ziggler-Zayn. I think Ziggler is winning, but because the Raw and SmackDown matches could go either way. And even Lesnar and Goldberg really isn't all that predictable. I could see Goldberg winning in his first match back. I think a lot of people do think Goldberg is winning. I think Lesnar should win and he will win, but I could see it going either way. And then Kalisto Kendrick is also unpredictable. So of all the matches, I'd go with Ziggler and Zayn, but even that match is a bit unpredictable. For TakeOver, Asuka and James, I feel like, is a foregone conclusion, but that should not take away from how good the match should be. If James wins, really kind of a waste of Asuka's undefeated streak, in my opinion. I mean, she lost to a legendary star, but that streak should really be broken by an up-and-coming star in NXT, like Ember Moon, in my opinion, like at some point, maybe on WrestleMania weekend or something. But anyway, so yeah, to answer your question, easiest to predict from TakeOver, Mickey and Asuka, and then from Survivor Series, Ziggler and Zayn. Hardest to predict from TakeOver, Revival, DIY. I've seen a lot. I've gone back and forth with people on Twitter saying that DIY is going to win. I'm saying I think Revival's going to win. I think a lot of people think Authors of Pain are winning. I could see TM61 winning. I think that's kind of my pick, actually. Shinsuke and Joe could also go either way, so that's why I didn't say that's the easiest to predict, because I could see Joe winning the belt back and then Shinsuke getting called up right afterwards. So you never know. It's happened before. Look at American Alpha. But yeah, I think that might be the hardest to predict from TakeOver, Revival, and DIY. Any of the Raw and SmackDown matches on Sunday are really hard to predict, because it really, not that they're hard to predict, but it doesn't really matter who wins. I mean, like you guys said earlier, like someone said earlier, there's nothing at stake, so who really cares who wins? You know, unless they add a certain stipulation tonight that the winning brand gets a draft pick or whatever, these matches don't really matter. I'm looking forward to them from an in-ring standpoint, but there's nothing on the line, so who cares really who wins? Unless you're a Team Raw guy or a Team SmackDown guy, whatever. I'll just go with the main male match. I feel like that one could go either way when you got Shane McMahon on one team, and the other team you got Rollins, Reigns, Owens, Jericho, Braun Strowman. You got Shane on the other team, AJ Styles, Dean Ambrose, Bray Wyatt, and Randy Orton. That's 2 teams full of 10 talented superstars. So I'll go with that one as the most unpredictable match on the show to predict for Survivor Series. And final 2 questions from Mr. Singleton 16. His first one was, what do you think about a broken Matt Hardy versus Undertaker match at WrestleMania 33? I mean, I like it in theory, but if Matt was brought in now, which he's not, you can't do it just because I think the Matt Hardy character, as great as it is, the reason why it's so great is because it has background in TNA. Like, you can't just bring the character into WWE and expect people to know what it's all about. And it's got a lot of love. It's got a lot of, like, attention from, like, the mainstream wrestling media, from people that don't even watch TNA on a regular basis. They've just tuned in for, like, Final Deletion and Bound for Glory and all this other stuff with the Hardys. So, but yeah, I mean, I think they really need to build up the Matt Hardy character if they're going to do that same character in WWE. And just the idea, I mean, Matt Hardy, the character, is amazing, but his matches aren't really any much different than they were when, I mean, other than the Final Deletion stuff, which really aren't matches, they're more like skits almost. They're extremely entertaining, but they're not really matches when you think about it. But anyway, I just think that the Matt Hardy, his matches, I love Matt Hardy, but the guy's almost 40 years old. I really have no desire to see a Matt Hardy versus Undertaker match at WrestleMania, despite how good the characters both are and how cool they would mesh together. A Matt Hardy Undertaker match at WrestleMania at this point in time just does not really do anything for me, but I could see why that'd be cool to some people. And then his final question here, how did you learn your wrestling history when you first started watching wrestling? I get that a lot. I mean, like, how do you know so much about this? Or how do you, like, first of all, my memory is just weird. Like, I can remember what happened on this day 5 years ago. I don't know why. I just can. That's just the way my memory works. So it kind of translates to wrestling that way. Like, not only do I remember what I was doing 5 years ago on this day, I can remember what I was doing, or what happened on Raw 5 years ago this day. The Rock returned to Raw. Cody Rhodes debuted new entrance music without the mask on. You had a lot of other good stuff. It was a 3-hour Raw. It was Raw Gets Rocked. I just remember that kind of stuff. It was the go-home show for Survivor Series. So anyway, I guess when I first started watching, what I do remember, it's not like I read books. I did read a lot of books. Like I read, which John lent me, which he lent it to me, which was a really, really good book. If you haven't read it yet, definitely check it out. The Death of WCW was great. Learned a lot from that in the summer of 2010. In the summer of 2011, I read The Rise and Fall of ECW, also a really, really good book. So a lot of book reading, a lot of, like when I first started watching, which was what your question was, what I would do before I went to bed, if Raw or SmackDown wasn't on, I would go on Wikipedia. I just remember one scenario, one instance where I was on Wikipedia where I was looking up Carlito's history. You know, on Wikipedia, like what they do on WWE.com where they recap the superstar's history, like what they've done in their time in WWE. I did that for Carlito. I think I did that for everybody. I would go up and down the roster on Wikipedia on both Raw and SmackDown to see like what happened with those guys. And a lot of the stuff that I would read on Wikipedia about their back history, about their backgrounds, it would resonate with me. It would stick with me, which is why I remember so much. And I would read the WWE Encyclopedia and stuff like that. But just kind of doing research. There's still a lot of stuff that I don't know about wrestling. Like, my knowledge about the past 10 years in wrestling is huge, but there's a lot of stuff I do not remember or don't even know about the Attitude Era or the 80s that I'm still learning, which is why the WWE Network is a beautiful tool to go back and watch pay-per-views, which I've done, which is a lot of fun. Reading up on stuff, listening to podcasts with people talking about the 80s and 90s. I'm still very much a student of wrestling, of the game, so to speak, as I was 8-9 years ago when I first started watching. Was really desperate and hungry and passionate and determined and driven and just everything to learn about wrestling. So I'm anxious to find out more about the product and become more knowledgeable as every day passes. So that does it, guys, with hashtag AskGSM November 14th, 2016 in the books here today, guys. The go-home show before the pay-per-views, the takeovers, the Survivor Series, all great wrestling this weekend. It's going to be great, guys. I could not be any more excited for it. As always, before we sign off here on the show, if you want to send in your questions, be sure to do so on the Twitter machine at WrestleRant with the hashtag AskGSM. Find me on Facebook. Give the pod channel a thumbs up at facebook.com/graham.gsm.matthews. Leave a question on the post I usually put up on Sunday nights or on the wall itself, or drop a question down below in the comments section. I'll be sure to include it in next week's video. So as always, guys, be sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your support is absolutely amazingly appreciated. You guys are so great. I'm so excited to be spending the next week with you guys, watching SmackDown, Aztec Warfare, tweeting about NXT Boston on Thursday, live tweeting during TakeOver and Survivor Series. The next 7 days, guys, are going to be stacked and just absolutely amazing. So again, thank you for your amazing support. You guys are just the absolute greatest. Be well, stay safe, have an awesome week, and I'll catch you fine folks down the road.